Hi, welcome to the XY Chromies, Confidently Uncertain, a show where two Army vets turned renewable energy engineers talk veteran issues, geopolitics, science, international relations, and engineering, and everything in between. I'm your host, Pearson Guest, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Richard Ellis. How's it going today, Richard?
Good Pearson, coming to you live from the Greasy Spoon Test Kitchen. I've been
Nice.
cooking and baking all day long.
Well, you got the shirt for it, I'll say that, so it's popping. Adding some much
It's a
needed color into our lives.
exactly. It's a little bit of a sunset. You know, when you see the whole thing, I just kind of look like one big red blip.
Yeah, that's good. You'll be great during a road crossing. No one should hit you. So that would be ideal.
I do a
Um,
lot of road crossing these days. Put a pylon on my head, rotating light.
God, the things we do to make ourselves useful. Anyways, yeah, it's been a week since we got to talk. Wait, no, 2 weeks because we couldn't film last week. But that's okay. We're back. A lot has happened in the last 2 weeks in America. If you guys are listening to this, just to date ourselves, it's March 9th. Yeah,
What it
March
says on
9th.
my calendar.
It is my sister's birthday, I guess, today. We do not talk, so anyways, happy birthday, sis. Randomly, you see the date and you're like, oh shit, it's my sister's birthday. Yeah, it's March 9th, and a lot has happened in the last couple weeks in America. Kind of been a whirlwind recently, I would have to say. We had our president bully a country that was being attacked by a large country, called them a dictator, and said they should have never started the war. I'm talking about Trump said this to Zelensky, not Putin. Um, Pu- Russia wasn't the smaller country we bullied, although we could have, because they're like half our size and about 1/20th of our military might, I would say at this point. We could have bullied Russia. We could do that. Um, but we didn't. We bullied Zelensky out of the White House. We kicked him right out. I shouldn't say we. I'm in abject disagreement with this current administration. In fact, um, me and Richard have made that clear on episodes from before. Uh, he then proceeded to withhold aid to Ukraine militarily and cut off their intelligence apparatus. Um, what followed has been one of the worst bombardments that the Ukrainian civilian population has had in the last 3 years from Russia, with a lot more casualties than usual because it turns out Ukrainian Patriot missile systems don't work very well without intelligence to show attacks coming in. Simultaneously, Starlink, which is what the internet apparatus that has been supporting the Ukrainian people, every time that they turn it on now, uh, the location or hotspots that are being turned on are being shelled by the Russians immediately, which means that Elon Musk is therefore giving the information to the Russians, with the equipment that the Ukrainians are needing to use to fight on the war front. Also, in the last 2 weeks, this administration sent a secret delegation to Zelensky's rivals in an attempt to coerce them into potentially helping with the overthrow or replacement of Zelensky. I know it's been all bad news in the last 2 minutes of me talking. So I will say they told the current administration to fuck off. So there's that, which is nice, little speck ray of hope. Um, and there's been so many other things that have happened as well. But that's kind of the big thing that has occupied a large portion of my soul and my brain, Richard. I have to say it's been ever prescient and extremely hard for me to ignore, even if I don't look at the news very often right now, or I'm trying to ignore headlines and take care of the kids and just, oh yeah, parenting, play more with the kids, play more with the kids. How about you? Did Did I miss anything particularly that you could think of that stands out there? Sorry.
No, and apropos of nothing, I just want to state that when you find yourself in a survival situation, one of the first things to do is establish shelter. You want to establish a means of creating an envelope where your body heat can be preserved. So,
Sure.
shelters first. Just want to say to the public, establish shelter. Next, the next order of priority is a clean source of water. So that can either be water that is coming from some, known source that's not polluted in some way, but you want to establish clean source of water. You can create a solar still to get water from the ground and collect it that way, and that's pretty clean if you can, have clean instruments. So shelter first, water, and then uh, the materials and so forth to build a fire if it's safe, and then collect food. Those are actually lower down on your list of priorities. I just want to state early on in this conversation that shelter, clean source of water, then fire, then food. Okay, that's just kind of how I want to. I want to bring that into the public consciousness because it's one of those things that we may have forgotten. Uh, this fieldcraft, this idea about fieldcraft, we may have forgotten that in our industrialized, modern, connected civilization, and it's entirely possible that we may get to revisit some of the utility of shelter first, clean source of water, fire, then food.
Oh,
That's
Richard,
priorities.
that's. But people are already thinking about the survive, like putting sticks together to make fire, and going and building a little fort in the woods to make their shelter.
Fort in the woods, yeah.
The skills you should work on for the survival is your shooting right now and your ability to steal from other people. Because the world that Richard is explaining is not one that you go out into the woods and do, really. That's not how 90% of you will survive. It's you're going to take it from somebody else and you're going to
Yeah.
guard your own resources. So get ready for that world because it will lead to the world that Richard's describing. It's just not the survival game that you have playing on in your head where you're starting fire and you go shoot a deer and make clothes and leather from its
Yeah.
clothing. That's not what Richard is saying. I mean, but I just wanted to make that distinction.
Yeah. I'm describing something that comes afterward. This is after a interstitial period where um, what we have come to know as the rule of law has broken down. I just want to state that that's first, then shelter, then a clean source of water,
Yeah.
then fire, then food.
On repeat because I don't know, these cycles seems to take a while. I don't know. I mean, if you dismantle civilization, I don't think our civilization is being dismantled, but I do think our republic is being dismantled right now. We've got to see Congress completely abdicate power. There's just a handful of Congress people who are speaking out right now. It's rather stark.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon senators are two that are very loud compared to most, which I'm proud of for the Oregonian, Jess Wyden and Merkley. I can see why they continue to get voted so often into our government. They're good ones. And I sent you one, McCarthy. What was his name? McCarthy. Today, the one that basically called it how it was. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that video.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised with Zihan. Did you see his video today?
Mm-hmm.
I've always wondered based on his profession, because he's a consultant and he's a geopolitical consultant, which means he consults with, and he's an American bull, right? He's bullish on America usually. So
Right.
I imagined he has lots of ties to military industrial complex members and other,
Mm-hmm.
elites that he has discussions with and that he advises and gives advice or talks to,
Yeah.
along with universities and so on and so forth. Um, so I've always saw him as someone who had to really be politically apolitical a lot of times in his analysis, as much as he could be, because he wants to, first off, give his information to a wide audience. Um, and yeah, and not alienate people because I mean he's from America, he's a capitalist. Why would you alienate a party? But for him to say what he said today was quite. I was. I'm glad I'm still listening to him. I'm kind of proud of him, not only starting. I should say, what did he do, Richard? Since I'm talking a lot. Um,
I'm glad you. I'm glad you brought this up because um, before I think if you and I just do a distillation of what Peter Zahan said, that's kind of boring.
yeah,
Let's think about why he talked about these current events.
yeah,
And one of the things that stands out for me in um, just the most highly evolved thinking is what are the intended results and who's this in service of, or what's
yeah.
this in service of, right? So you think about this sort of bias towards outcomes or end states,
Sure,
and he made the observation because he went down a list of things similar to what you described when we first started our
sure.
session today. He went down a list of things and he said, you know, none of these are actually in service of the MAGA agenda
Yeah,
because the MAGA agenda, as it as we have come to understand it, has these internal logic to it, right? There's a sense of looking inward, so
I
that
mean, we can just call it. It's nationalism. First off,
yeah,
MAGA
it's
is nationalism.
exactly so
Yeah,
so internally consistent. It would be looking inward to be nationalistic. It might it might have all these flavors of um well, let's say maybe there are fewer civil rights and human rights afforded to the population under MAGA, but for the most part, what they're looking at is strengthening the internal reserve of the nation
sure,
and decoupling ourselves from a global trade system that has largely been at our expense. Right? They see this as an enterprise of right the Make America Great Again
hmm,
philosophy. So it's just a way of organizing a civilization.
sure.
And what Peter was saying today, he was observing that what he is seeing coming from our current executive administration of the United States is inconsistent with the internal goals of MAGA.
Yes,
Because what he observes is a growing tendency towards deference to some of the longest term goals, objectives, and stated mission of what had been the Soviet Union and now the Russian Republic.
yes,
He observed that that the organizations over time have changed. The name of them have changed, but the objectives have stayed the same.
yeah,
And that what has happened essentially over the last 6 weeks has allowed the former Soviet Union and modern Russian Federation to accomplish the goals that they set out to accomplish. I'm sorry, I'm being
yeah,
so redundant. In the 1950s,
yeah,
literally, our nation has handed the Russians a sovereign nation whose collective ideology is antithetical to our own.
yeah,
They have been afforded their greatest desires in foreign policy, security, and um, the sort of just the project of their civilization has been given
new life. I would say it.
new
Yeah,
absolutely new
it's
life.
it's a new life. What's insane is at the same time, and I know the Trump administration is not intending to do this part, but they are actually strengthening China, someone that the Trump
Mm-hmm.
administration does view as an enemy. Because
Yes,
frankly, if you're Russia, you can feel the noose tightening on your neck.
right.
And the noose is Chinese. It's a Sino
Yeah.
noose. Um, because frankly, China has not forgotten the hundreds of years of not subjugation, but might be theft by the Russians of the Chinese people. And this Xi is a student of history the same way Putin is in imperial terms. And
Mm-hmm.
um, this whole war has been an amazing process for China to not only ease the tension on its really bad shape economy right now, its overbloated
Hmm.
economy. Um, this these tariffs, this attack on our allies,
Hmm.
strengthens China so much right now, because who can beat the Canadian and Mexican imports with 25% tariffs? Well, the Chinese can with all of their materials and goods. Who does this help out? Well, we're giving them lifelines right now.
Yeah.
Um, you said it right. I think what Zion I think the final part is where I really was proud. He said all the things that so many people
Yep.
don't say, and they were, this isn't incompetence.
Yeah.
This isn't childishness. This isn't
Yep.
all the things that the media and the news has gotten used to saying to Trump, and all the things that
Hmm.
MAGA people forgive of Trump.
Hmm.
When you talk to MAGA, they admit this part. They go, well, I don't agree with everything he does. And yeah, he acts like this, but he gets
Yeah.
results. They'll say the other, they're
Yep.
like, but the ends justify the means. He talks
Yeah.
shit, that doesn't matter. Look what he did. The perceived wins override the behavior or whatever. What Zion does is he dispels all of these things.
Yep.
He All of this is way too quick and it's way too perfect
Hmm.
for the Russians. And
Yep.
Merkley did something similarly during. If you saw the cabinet when he was approved, they were doing the confirmations. He's talking the defense secretary and all these people who are, Trump toadies. So they're like, oh, I don't agree with your framing. But he lays out all the things that Trump's done in the last 6 weeks. And he goes like, is there a thing that a Russian plant would have done that Trump hasn't already done? Even he's like, he basically says, let's say there are no ties to Russia, and Trump is just cooking, as they say. Uh,
Yeah.
it's all just coming from him. What has he done that a Manchurian candidate for Russia wouldn't have done? I mean, we say Manchuria, which is funny because Manchuria is the part of that land that we just taught, that's been in contention.
Hmm.
If you guys understand a little bit about geography, Manchuria is hot contested ground between the Chinese, the Russians, the Japanese at times. The Koreans, I think, have had a stab at Manchuria before. The Mongols, they took Russia and they took Manchuria and all of that shit. So,
Hmm.
um, anyways, that's to say, like, what hasn't he done that isn't what we're seeing right now? And I think I'm very happy with the direction he's going to take, where he's going to look at it from the Russian perspective. Basically,
Yep.
like, what does this mean in their, what are the outcomes that they're going to face now because of the decisions the U.S. are making? And he's going to look at it from a positive or negative lens. How does this affect Russia? I think this is a really fascinating approach to take. I'm curious to see because, as a listener of Zion for a long time, I'm not blind to the amount of hyperbole he's put into place when it comes to talking about things, and a lot of oversimplification of
Hmm.
really complex geopolitical international relation issues down to like very. I don't think that's a problem for a couple things. I'm gonna steel man why Zihan does it because
Right.
one, I saw a Reddit post where someone's like, "Damn, I'm not a huge Zion fan because he has the intellectual depth of like a toddler." They said something like that. Um,
Sure.
and I thought that was super unfair. I could understand not liking Zihan, not agreeing with his perspectives. If you've heard him talk about Iran or some countries, he kind of gets it wrong. But who could get it right about anywhere? I, but that doesn't mean he's intellectually, some stunted or anything like that. What I think he's doing, this is a marketing ploy for how you market your information. One, it's
Hmm.
understanding that Americans are very uninformed about the world in general, even our own geography, for the love of God. It's pathetic.
Yep.
Dr. Casagrande of UT Austin brings this up all the time. The American education system is so bad that, how could you really blame people for being so uninformed? Um, I have been uninformed, up until my 30s, I was fairly uninformed, and I thought I was pretty informed. I might have been more informed than the average person my age. That was an American, I would say, not out of
Mm-hmm.
America. That anybody in Europe or any other country would have looked at me like, "Damn, dude, you guys even go to school?" And they probably did when I would talk to them about certain things. Sometimes, sometimes I relive a conversation I had when I was like in Greece with somebody. Like now, I'll have like a snippet of like and I'm like, God, I probably said so many embarrassingly obtuse and ignorant things.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of like quickly relive like a moment, not really remembering what I said, but I'm just thinking, yeah, 23-year-old Pierce was saying some dumb shit back then. I know it. When he was in Greece, he was probably saying all kinds of. Anyways, my point is that Zion needs to disseminate this information to the lowest common denominator. If you want to get a large audience, you have to oversimplify things, and especially for our audience. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't mean the people listening to us right now. You guys are the smart ones. You guys are the triple digits. But for all the other morons out there, for all the double digits, I get the need to disseminate it down to there. And
Yeah.
I say that as someone who has had a double digit IQ at some point too. I know this isn't how IQ works, but IQ is kind of a lie anyway, so I don't really give a shit. We can kind of just bend what it is. Like it's not a great measure of intelligence, okay? So we can throw around triple digit and double digit around because, you know, morons on both sides of the aisle do it all the time and they misrepresent their IQ. So I'll just be one of those morons right now. The point is, I understand why he does this, and it's a marketing ploy. It's how you get all this information out, and it's how you get information out um, to get people's foot in the door. I think Zion's a really good gateway drug to
Yeah.
geopolitical information. And so that's all to say, I've heard him repeat himself a lot because I've listened to him a lot. And so to set context for questions he gets, if it's about China, he'll give you the context of China and it'll be a quick TLDR of his overall
Yeah.
thesis on China, right? And he'll do the same thing for Russia and a lot of countries he talks about often. So you and I, if we've listened to him for a while, he repeats himself often. I'm excited now because one, the Trump series he's been doing is new. And so
Yeah.
we get to see how his brain works in real time more from the prepared stuff. And same with this Russia stuff. I think this is going to be a nice, new, refreshing insight into what he's thinking and how he's evaluating the world now. Um, so that's my overall take on Zihan right now and what he's doing. I'm very happy with it.
I
So
I like one of the things that I appreciate about his commentary, and it the forum might have changed a couple of different times, but I've heard him say the same thing in those different forums.
mm-hmm.
I got it wrong on Ukraine, he says.
Yeah,
He says if you take the distillation of geography, demographics, economy, if you do the comparison math, you get a less than or equal sign, right? You get the open alligator, and it points towards Russia, and the small side of the alligator points towards Ukraine.
yeah,
So it's obvious, it's self evident that in 36 hours, a full frontal attack by the Russian Federation military is going to defeat whatever resistance the Ukrainians can put up. And he says, "Wow, was I wrong about that?" And the Ukrainians have overperformed all in every possible way that we could have tried to measure.
yeah,
So I appreciate that about what he says as well. And so I think in our forum about this, in our discussions either about his topics or the man himself, there's some legitimacy to what he says for our purposes because of his willingness to say, "Ha, this was one time that I totally blew it on my estimations." And the rest of what he's saying is essentially the presentation version of what he's written in his books. He's
yeah,
written a couple different books on the what you can again over reduce and boil down the 20th century United States and the political decisions that were made throughout the 20th century that led to globalization.
yeah,
And I want to swing back into and get back into that initial idea when we talk about the administration that's operating our country currently,
Yes, Musk. I mean, yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
this administration appears to, for all intents and purposes, began a process of distancing themselves as an administration and our nation from allies in Europe specifically and in other parts of the world. And I want to I want to really flag that because when we think about the word allies and where that started to get used quite a bit was in any commentary that discussed the coalition of forces that was fighting in World War II. And the word allies has actually been also applied to the coalition of forces that were fighting in World War One against Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And we now refer to this thing called allies, and there isn't a specific war that we're a coalition, fighting against some other, enemy. That's not
Mm-hmm.
really what's. I mean, there's a war in Ukraine, so I mean, my definitions here are a little flaky, but when we talk about these allies, what we're talking about is the coalition of governments that might have wildly different enterprises. Like their national missions might be a little bit different, or might even have some conflict with their neighbors. There could be any number of reasons why they are not completely aligned with each other, and yet what we did is come together as a alliance. The United States, Great Britain, France, and I'm going to stop there. But let's just observe that there are many other member states in
NATO.
NATO,
Yeah.
right? With the expressed intent, with the open intent of preventing another world war that would start in Europe.
Yeah. With
It was
Russia. We, it, everyone,
yes,
I'm sorry, we can just dispel this. It was to prevent World War III with Russia. That it was
yes,
specifically for that because everyone knew, the Russians and the West included, that we were heading towards a world war.
yes, yes.
Both everybody knew that. The Russians knew it could happen at any moment,
Mm-hmm.
and so did we. Everyone was like, okay, and all these steps were us going, well, we don't want them to have control, so we need to figure out how we can use soft
Mm-hmm.
power. And Russia was like, we're going to use hard power. We used hard
Yep.
power too on a lot of countries. I mean, fuck, dude, we were overthrowing democracies too the whole time we
Yeah.
have been. Um,
In an effort to undermine, displace, or otherwise make it impossible for the Soviet Republic to be even more effective, there were casualties that were democracies, and it's one of
well,
our it's one of our the black marks on our history as a nation.
I would say we did it while we were trying to do that, and then we started doing it pretty cynically after the
Yep.
70s and 80s and 90s and
Yep.
so on. And
Yep.
before, I think we did have some righteous justification when Truman,
Sure.
started the Korean War. He felt like he had to. I mean, he didn't nuke China, thank God. So good to
Yep.
you, Truman. And Eisenhower, he thought he needed, Vietnam had to happen.
Hmm.
Like, because the French were imperialists and that was
Hmm.
no good. uh,
Right.
you know, so there was a sense of we're gonna stop, we're gonna overthrow people, we're gonna do these things, but there was a righteous feeling to it.
Yeah.
In the 70s and onward, it became incredibly cynical. I mean, Kissinger the merchant of chaos. Like, he
Hmm.
is the guy who was like, well, if the world has a manageable level of chaos, and chaos is just held to third world countries, we can maintain the global shipping order, the global
Right.
that global trade that we set up. We can maintain
Yep.
that and exploit those countries because the chaos will be happening, so we can exploit them for the resources. This is what Kissinger's entire international relations policy was, and he did it. He was wheeling and dealing like a mofo. I imagine there were all kinds of suitcases going to whatever dictator he needed it to go to do whatever it needed to happen. So, yeah,
Now,
I just want to make that distinction that like there was maybe what we could call good tampering. I don't know if there ever is at this point. And then we did some really cynically terrible tampering to a lot of democracies and a lot of burgeoning countries that were trying to, get out from some form of oppression.
one of the and part of the other side of the tennis court here, we could say, is that the Soviet Union's enterprise of subsuming nations in Eastern Europe had almost everything to do with something I've probably mentioned this forum before. Never again. Never again will we be invaded. The last time, the last time we'll ever be invaded in history was Nazi Germany, the betrayal of Hitler to Stalin. The last time, never again. And so their state enterprise, the Soviet state enterprise, had everything to do with creating a larger and larger crust of nations around Russia to defend against another invasion. They wanted to set the security policy for Latvia, Estonia.
Well, and
Poland.
exploit them. And let's not forget,
Yeah,
because you can want two things at the same time, just like
Yeah,
Kissinger
totally.
was like, hey, chaos for this so that we can do this, right? Like
Totally.
maintain global order, trade lots of arms, and exploit that country.
Right.
3 birds, 1 stone. The Russians,
Done.
same way. They didn't want to fucking give up Ukraine. Ukraine wasn't just about security. Ukraine is one of the richest parts
Yes.
of the Russian Empire if it's part of the Russian Empire. Every time Ukraine is the prize, it's the access to the Black Sea. There's no Black Sea fleet. There's no access into the northern Atlantic if you don't have that area, because the Swedes will not let it happen, essentially, right? Like, fuck you, Russia. It's so you lose the Black Sea, you lose the strait that Turkey has, and that tradeway out through the Mediterranean.
Yep.
All of that is gone, and
Yep.
you lose 40% of your oil because Ukraine has it. You lose
Yep.
a good portion of your minerals, most of your fertilizer supply, and the technology. Ukraine is the technological hub of Russia, if you think about it now. Russia's dilapidated scholastic system collapsed in the 90s. They don't have tons of talent coming out of there the way that Ukraine does with like radio engineers. And Ukraine has one of the most prolific radio frequency engineering programs in the whole world. Like there's tons of them here in the Bay Area, tons of engineers from Ukraine that are all in radio and telecommunication engineering. It's no wonder that they're experts on drones and finding frequencies and stuff and ways of operating things remotely. This is what they do. So, Ukraine has always been the prize for Russia. It always has. I mean, shit. There's a reason why they've tried to get out of Russia's thumb out from under its thumb like 6 times.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because the Ukrainians hired the Russians to defend them back when Russia wasn't a country. That's what's crazy. Ukrainian kings and queens hired the House of Rus to defend their family. But they were a bunch of backstabbing Swedes. So, anyways, shout out to the Swedes, by the way, my Swedish brethren. There you go. Even the backstabby ones.
So our thesis here, if I could return to a central idea of our conversation, is that it really matters that the United States has allies who were who were involved in whatever way in World War II. It is essential to our national security that the national security of our former European allies is sustained. And
it was essential that Germany doesn't remilitarize. Part of it was like
essential.
It was essential. And guess what? Merce announced this fucking week $500 billion in an unlimited loan, military loan for Germany. Unlimited, meaning that they need to make up for the infrastructure that's about to leave and go to Hungary, because that's what Trump is doing. He's sending his infrastructure to neutral Hungary to go chill with Viktor Orban and train his soldiers up. I'm assuming we're going to get free. Viktor Orban's like, oh, hell yeah. I know soldiers who will be going over there, actually. Fuck you guys, by the way. You're two pieces of shit. You voted for this. You wanted this. You thought this was the world order you wanted. Fuck you. Have fun in Hungary, bitch, with a fucking dictator. Anyways, I'm serious. You know who you are. If you watch this podcast ever, you know who you are. Fuck you and your family.
This bit of vitriol has been brought to you by the Global World Order, established by the United States and Great Britain after World War II.
That's right. So anyways, okay, so I got one for you. I have a question for you.
All right, fire away.
Because I have a theory, but I want to see maybe if I'm too far off base. I'll lay this out. So it seems to me that everything that Trump is doing is to reduce where our power, where we're going to project power,
right,
to the region of North America. It looks like that's what he wants to do. He wants to put all of our, and then maybe we'll project power east towards China, right? The enemy that we can other because they're not white and, they are a big threat. So, you can have that truth that China is a big threat. You want to create a regional power around here. Now, to get parties to agree to this, and I mean the elites to agree to this, you had to get the technocrats, the oil guys, and the rest of the billionaires and the military industrial complex. All of these people kind of had to be on board for Trump's regional power. So some people have to... So when I think about this, there's a lot of stones that this does. There's a lot of people that this benefits in specific ways. And I want to run through this list and see how you think this benefits them and why they would want it. So I'll give you the easy one. We'll start with, why does the military industrial complex want to do this when it seems so much better to sell all these weapons to NATO? I mean, we've had this easy funnel, and the rest of the Europe is becoming more militarized. Yeah. Why does our military brass, the ones making strategy who are agreeing with this, the ones who have a vision for how we're going to militarily go forward as a country and defend our best interest? Because those people exist. They exist. Trump, those people are still in the Pentagon. There's some of those people here who are planning how our country is going to project power over the next 20, 50 years. What do they get from this? And what's their thinking? If you could take a guess.
It's not that we're going to shrink the investment in the armed forces or our military investment. We're not shrinking it. But what we're going to do is retool it. It's going to be refactored for a different type of conflict that we're going to engineer. The objective is to set the time, place, and bias to our advantage for the next conflict. Now that sounds pretty ambitious, given that historically, if you take a look at wars from the past, the tactical assumptions that the generals and admirals are going to make are based in the last war. So they might be fighting the current war with antiquated tactics, antiquated ideas, antiquated technology, right? So
similarly, we talked about how politicians have been tackling modern day problems with solutions that were 40 years old instead of 80 years old that they should have been, or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
And so what that actually amounts to, I guess we could prognosticate that all day long, because it can be a uh, hemisphere-wide missile defense system. It can
Hmm.
be a reinvestment in factories that make drones in a way that you darken the skies. It can be towards things that are autonomous devices or mechanisms.
So
Some would say
all
robotics.
in-house defense, Iron Dome,
Yeah,
battle Star
right.
Wars type, and I mean Reagan
Yeah.
Star Wars, not the movie Star Wars. If you guys don't know, okay, that's good. What do the technocrats want out of this? Why would they want the country to close off trade from the wild world? Like, why does Apple, Google, and Facebook and all of these people, Twitter, what is Musk? What do Peter Thiel, what are these guys looking to get out of it? Do you know?
Well, they're never going to stop enjoying the largesse of the globe. They have access to it.
Of
That's
course.
they're fine despite what happens here. Um, one of the one of the dire consequences of what has happened in the last 6 weeks is it's going to shrink, and I say temporarily because who knows for how long.
Yeah.
It's going to shrink our economy,
Yeah.
and it's going to create a disruption in our economy that um, the same winners and losers will exist. They're just going to win bigger and lose more. That's the
Yes.
so we have income disparity problems. And so one of the ways that you can really, when you think about how, if we disconnect from the global world order that again we created
Yeah.
and propped up and defended and supported, and right,
Yeah.
we bake that cake, and here we go.
Now we're
So
smash.
one of
Smash.
the so you asked about the technocrats. So one of the things that this is a pretty dystopian view. But
I,
essentially what's about to take place is that people that were above the poverty line in this country are about to fall below it.
yes.
And when
Right
you
here.
do that,
Right here.
yeah,
Just I'm
exactly.
riding the line. I
Yeah.
cut my own hair still, guys.
Yeah.
I'm riding the line.
And poverty in this country is a different has a different threshold standard or definition than it
Sure.
does elsewhere.
Sorry, in
But
America, poverty means you can't buy a house. So I know that sounds pretty privileged, I should say, because I'm eating fine. We're totally not starving, you
right,
know. Um,
yeah.
but I had the same pair of running shoes for 6 years, 7 years. It means you're frugal, and I'm not buying a house. You know.
So essentially, what we're about to set up is, well, it's one part it's an ethno state, and one
Hmm.
part it's
Class state.
a class divided state with the desired intent of what will essentially be a slave workforce in the American public.
Sure. Some form of indentured ish type.
Yeah,
Yes. Right now, all the labor, the labor bureau has been dismantled. The NLRB,
yeah,
the one that goes after
yeah,
people, all the ones who had cases against Google, Amazon, uh, and Musk, all of those federal investigations, those went away a couple weeks ago, right? So Musk came in and was like, I don't need to be investigated. Goodbye. You're all fired. All the corruption
yep,
people, they got fired. Yeah. So this is good. I think it's in line basically with what I was thinking is like there's so much that happens if you're a cynical person in this country and you want to rule this country in a certain way.
yeah,
You have to distance yourself from all of our Western allies because our Western allies, it was funny when you were describing them all, they're allies because generally there was all an agreement of some form of liberalism amongst the
yeah,
people. Whether
yeah,
we're looking at the UK or France or Japan or Korea. And I'm not saying that they don't have restrictions on their liberal values, right? They don't necessarily have freedom of speech in the UK comparatively to what we consider freedom of speech and,
yeah,
so on and so forth. You like can't talk shit about Parliament without getting in trouble, or something. I don't remember. But that's not to say that all of these countries have afforded some version of liberal democracy. They have liberal freedoms to work the way you want to work, to have the businesses you want to have, and so on and so forth. And if you don't want that in your country and that's all of your peers, you have to leave that group of peers.
Bingo.
So that's what the technocrats get out of this, and the oligarchs, anybody who wants to control. Peter Thiel and Musk believe they should be small monarchs in their own right and rule over their company and whatever regions they think they should. This is not what Trump believes and his ilk. I believe they're a different crew. They're there to rob. Trump is there to rob, by the way. He is cynically there to just get as much money as possible from everybody that he can. If you're talking to Trump, you can pay $5 million. You can have a meeting with Trump right now. If you have a business, and I highly recommend this, if you have a business and it's a $10 million, $20 million, your business is worth something around there, you should take out a loan against your business and for $5 million and go talk to Donald Trump, get a dinner with him, compliment him up the Rizzy. I don't care what your business is. I mean, it might not even need help, but this will benefit you. If I had this money and I had a business, I would not hesitate, and I was a cynical person, I would not hesitate to spend $5 million, go talk to Donald Trump, get a dinner with him. I would riz his ass the fuck up for an hour and kind of mention my business maybe once or twice and just be like at the end so he would remember and just be like, yeah, by the way, I'm an engineer and I make blah, 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 I make drone wings or whatever. I'm trying to save, I'm trying to make drone wings for our military. He'd be like, oh, you're a good guy. He'd say I was smart and awesome. I'd be like, yeah, there's a regulation. It's an issue,
Yeah.
I'm trying to use steel from China. They're not letting me use steel from China, but there's no other steel. Is there anything you could think of? And be like, well, you know what? Yeah, you can use steel from this company, blah, 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 and I'll give you, whatever it would be. The point is like, you can do this with our president right now. You can literally go talk to him. You can, if you just want to influence him, you could buy some of his meme coin. And then that way no one will really trace how much money you've given him. And you just be like, hey, you see how your stock just went up $30 million again? That was me. You can spend $5 million for a gold card if you're from any country we don't like, and you'll be in. You've got a citizenship instantly. So he's here to sell. The military's here to probably industrialize our arms, build it up for China. Probably is the idea. If we can justify cutting off some other areas, you could start building up our military supply to deal with China potentially. So creating this regional area is about control. It's about undoing liberalism. It's about enslaving the people. And it's about exacting as much wealth from us as possible, while at the same time abandoning our current allies and making them pay exorbitantly just to talk to us, basically. Where that'll basically be, it's funny. We sound like the goddamn Ottoman Empire in the 1400s, dude. More like any other empire, it feels like we're the Ottoman Empire.
Isn't it great to have a change? We used to think that we were Rome, some modern Rome kind of copy, and now it's no longer a Rome copy. We get an actual proper reassessment of our empirical, our empire.
Well, Richard, we are America, so I just say both, because the Ottoman Empire included fucking Rome at the time. I'm pretty sure it sure did. So they fucking already 1400s Ottoman Empire. We got fucking Rome. So boom, the U.S. right now looks like the Ottoman Empire. And in the 1400s, this is after the 1500s is kind of like the turning point for the Ottoman Empire. What it started to do is it started to oscillate between in this weird world of bureaucracy, because at the time sultans had really started to lose power over generations.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Ottomans had stopped conquering, and we've done this series, so you guys can go back and get the full version, but just for the quick summary, the Ottoman empires, when it stopped expanding, a lot of the elite that came about from all the wealth that was generated started to condense around the leadership center where the Sultan was. And because the Sultan was more and more isolated and surrounded by the elite, he became more and more out of touch and more insulated from the world's problems. A lot of this had to do with the way the mother would get involved, and the vizier, advisor is where that comes from. It's wazir, by the way, not vizier. That's how it's said in Arabic, but we use V. So anyways, so yeah, this is what happened. And essentially, anytime there was a sultan or a vizier that wanted to get something done, the nobles would kill that person, right? Like, they're like, oh, we want to tax the rich. And the rich were like, fucking remove that vizier, kill the sultan, whatever. They'd talk a mom into overthrowing her son or replacing the son with a younger one. All of these things happen. Imagine sultans like the one from Aladdin, right? The dumb dad who's kind of being tricked by the vizier. It's a kind of a cartoonish meme of what sultans were like. And I mean, that was in, Saudi Arabia or something. I mean, that was the Arabian area, not the Ottomans, but whatever. Same, I mean, Disney just steals from all types of cultures to make some silly, movie. So my point is that you started to see even the politicians that tried to get things done in the Ottoman Empire failed because of the elites started to just consolidate wealth, and corruption happened and greed happened. And they started to the point where they squeezed other countries coming through there so badly. Hey, we're going to charge 400%. What are they going to do? Sail around Africa? And the Portuguese said, yeah, we will. Peace, bitch.
One of the historical drivers of what ultimately became the Columbian Exchange was the location of the Ottoman Empire right at the trailhead of the Silk Road to Europe.
Yeah.
And they could set, because technology, there was the precedented technology did not allow for any other trade routes. That was the best possible thing you could do from a greedy empire's perspective. Yeah, pretty brilliant. So, great observation. We have historical precedents that tell us a lot about how we can understand or interpret what's happening presently. I want to, if I could mention, sometime if you get a chance and you have the time or wherewithal, or maybe you want to listen to the audiobook, I recommend the audiobook Oryx and Crake.
Oryx and Crake, okay.
Yeah, from the author of I'll think of her name here in a second. I should probably look it up.
Do you want to tell the audience a quick TLDR summary to get people to whet their appetite?
I sure do. Oryx and Crake is this speculative fiction about this confluence of events that take technology as we understand it now,
mm-hmm.
and just moves it slightly ahead in time.
Okay.
And her name is right here on the tip of my tongue, and I'm looking it up now. Margaret Atwood. There we go.
Oh, Margaret Atwood.
And yeah, the author of
I know this name, but
it's coming to me too. Oh, our minds are so corruptible.
I've got dictators on the brain. I'm sorry. Margaret Atwood, famous books.
Margaret Atwood is the author of more than 60.
Oh yeah, The Handmaid's Tale.
There we go. That's the one I was trying to think of. Sorry,
yeah,
everyone.
Sorry, people. There's a bazillion people that don't watch this podcast, but the 5 to 20 people that watch are like yelling, "The Handmaid's Tale! Haven't you watched Hulu, you assholes?" It's like, yeah. Okay.
So it's a speculative fiction about taking our modern understanding of genetics, genomics, modifying genes,
Mm-hmm.
and the technical world that has to exist to support that. But she does something with it that's really diabolical. And what what happens she doesn't describe, but the outcome is this balkanized world where corporations essentially are islands of their own civilizations. They're city states.
Oh,
And
so
so if
what
you
I described with Yarvin's philosophy of like
bingo,
little monarchies. Okay.
bingo. So a person could work at multiple corporations. It is possible. It's hard to do. It kind of once you get hired by one of them, it's a bad idea to leave. There's a couple of different things that are going on here, but this is like literally background to the story that's going on, which is really captivating and interesting. No spoilers, so sorry. Check the book out for yourself.
I'd like. This sounds like something I'll definitely listen to the audio version of.
But but what you get in Oryx and Crake is this sort of what it would be like to live in this technocracy, where you either are employed by one of the major effective corporations, you live on site. So good news is your commute's really short if you want to,
Mm-hmm.
go to commute into work. You're always at work. You're never not at work. I mean, sure, you have a place you go to that you technically can rest
You're
for a few
always being
hours.
monitored, I imagine.
Yeah, you're always you're if you so sure in this dystopian version of our world you do have freedom of speech. You're just at pains not to use it. That's just the idea.
Without knowing much, you said genomics and then these city state corporations with kind of this weird
Mm-hmm.
futuristic authoritarian type whatever of
Yep.
localized control. I thought of
Yeah.
Gattaca for some reason with Ethan
Yeah.
Hawke
Gattaca.
and Uma Thurman,
Totally similar.
um, and
So
Jude
so
Law.
we
Yeah. Anyway, so
we
yeah.
we strayed into. I caught Gattaca one time, and I didn't know what it was. I watched it through the whole movie. I didn't know the name of it, and years later, I discovered the title of it, and it was like, whoa, Anyway,
Yeah. That's
so
one of those
um,
movies that sticks with you for like
does
you watch it once and you're like, "Damn, that was good." And it's so weird and depressing that I don't know if I could watch it ever again, and I don't even know if I
exactly
need to because I remember
yeah
most of the whole movie still to this day. It's
yep.
like poof, it's in there. Like
Just lives right here rent free. So
yeah.
we slipped into a little bit of speculative fiction here, talking about these topics. These This book by Margaret Atwood. By the way, it's a trilogy. So Oryx and Crake is the first in a trilogy. It's great. I highly recommend it. You can't
Damn.
Margaret Atwood. Come on, accept no substitute. She's incredible.
Yeah, man.
But
I'm gonna have to get into. I can't wait till I can read fiction again when I have time for that kind of thing. But man,
yeah, totally.
this will be definitely on the list. So
But what she describes is one of the possible versions that's an answer to your questions, right? The
sure.
questions you posed two hypothetical questions to me. One was, all right, so we have a coalition of military industrial complex, which includes our highest brass
Yeah.
and technocrats.
Yeah.
So in that coalition, what do they desire out of this? Well, Margaret Atwood describes a possible future that can come from it. Much of the nation lives in some despairing poverty outside the gates of these
Yeah.
corporate
They're like
compounds.
these little, yeah, corporate compounds, and there's slums all around them, and
Totally.
people are fighting to get into those fucking compounds because
Yes.
life is actually better in that weird slavery version than whatever
Yeah, totally. I
dystopian
mean,
shit's happening out there. Of course.
the corporate entities are staffed by people who understand the carrot and stick model of motivation, and so they offer lots of carrots and some sticks. But what you know is that when you leave that compound, life gets really hard really fast,
Yeah.
and it's not a place that civilized people want to be in. And it's the um, push and pull of that fracture in our civilization that really constitutes the spine of the plot. So brilliant work. I
I love
don't
it.
think we want to live in that dystopian future. I don't think it's good for us. In Margaret Atwood's work, slight spoiler, it turns out bad for humanity. So, you know, we
A dystopian story that turns out bad for humanity.
Yeah.
Who could have thought? Seems
An
to be a lot
author
of those
writes a
lately.
book called The Pain Nexus, and then all of a sudden, scientists announce we've invented the pain nexus.
It's sometimes fiction writes reality, and sometimes reality writes fiction, right? Whatever. We
Totally.
have this. It's funny. We've seen tons of dystopian futures laid out before us in the last 20 years. Really, we have. I mean, there's a ton of some of the best movies. They're all dystopian, from The Matrix
Yeah.
all the way to, the Hunger Games, or freaking the Korean one. What is it? What was that one? Was really everyone watched that. I haven't seen it yet, but it was dystopian.
Game.
Squid Game. You play a game for money to the death. So different version of Hunger Games. I mean, ironically, Squid Games is the Korean one. Hunger Games is based off a Japanese story that didn't get as much steam, but was the Hunger Games prequel. Yeah, we love our dystopian shit, from Judge Dredd to there's tons of these different versions. I think there's something to all of these, from Equilibrium to Black Mirror to all these different things. There's probably a little bit of what our dystopian future holds ahead of us, which is okay. I mean, utopia is always supposed to be a goal, but you never get there.
Right.
Dystopia is supposed to be something that happens to you, but you can get out of it. That's my takeaway on this. So I'd like to jump right back into a next episode if you have time. Do you have time?
I do. Yeah.
I think I do. And I want to do it right away, but I'm going to just end this with the question I'm going to pose to you, and we're just going to start right back into it. What are the routes you think that will happen? And this is very much going to be just predictive based on our knowledge of history or whatever. What are the routes around the U.S. empire that countries will start to take as a result of us deciding to do the Ottoman thing, where we start to bully people, we raise up the rates to 400%, and we say, what are you going to do? Swim around us? We're America. You can't ignore us. And if you ignore us, it doesn't matter. We can ignore you. What could happen from this? The good and the bad, because there are good and bad things that can happen from this. I'm just curious, and I have some thoughts about this too. So that's my question I'll leave us with.
Answer coming up next.
Nice. If you haven't seen us already, like and subscribe and all that jazz that we have to say for YouTube. And thanks for watching us. We'll try to entertain you while the world crumbles around us. All right. Take care, Richard.
All right, dude. I'll see you on the next we go around.
All right.